All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Technically Developers Conference. I am Julie Zeiglin. I'm Technically's managing editor, and I'm your MC for the day. So you right now are in the session called The GIS Framework That Connects Policies to Racial Disparities. A team at ESRI, it's pronounced ESRI, right, Clinton?
Yep.
Cool. Team at ESRI, the global location intelligence platform provider, leveraged a suite of GIS tools to demonstrate how disparities in communities led to disparities in health outcomes and what policies can affect change. Look inside how the various components were built and worked together and what the impact has been. So here you see Clinton Johnson, ESRI's Racial Equity Unified Team Lead. So Clinton, I will let you take it away. Thanks for leading the session.
Thanks, Julie.
Yeah.
As she said, my name is Clinton Johnson. I use he, him pronouns, and I lead ESRI's Racial Equity Unified Team, where we focus on delivering geospatial capabilities and providing guidance to help organizations advance racial equity and social justice. And many organizations are stepping up to do their part to address racial equity, recognizing that racial injustice is everyone's problem to address. All of these commitments reflect decisions being made by organizations to intentionally increase racial equity, many of which require policy changes as well as improvements to day-to-day operations. Individuals, communities, and organizations all have a need to understand how business decisions will ultimately impact equity. And organizations are trying to understand their impact on communities and find ways to create benefits for communities of color and not burdens. And many companies are trying to ensure that their workforce reflects the communities they serve, and organizations are taking an intersectional approach to assessing equity in their staff. Racial equity is increasingly a priority for many countries, including the US, and in many ways, the government has recognized that racial equity and social justice has a role to play across the board. It's clear that policies and decisions related to the management of the pandemic must be equitable to address racial disparities in COVID-19 and to address health equity more broadly. Economic recovery must address long persisting racial inequities that have created and sustained poverty in many communities of color. And climate change policies must address climate and environmental justice, recognizing that historic and contemporary practices have led to racial inequities where areas that have higher proportions of Black and Brown people tend to be areas that have higher concentrations of environmental pollutants. And ESRI provides a comprehensive GIS and location intelligence collection of resources to support a broad range of racial equity and social justice initiatives. And that includes capabilities and guidance to enable organizations to apply an intersectional racial equity lens to assess their decisions and their practices, and resources to help developers embed equity directly into applications and into system integration workflows. So before I get into all that, I just want to talk about what's behind all of this. So we recognize that these inequities are intrinsically and structurally related. Therefore, they create a wide range of experiences and outcomes for people across many different communities. And very often we find ourselves focusing on the outcomes when thinking of inequities. We focus on issues like disparities in chronic health conditions and career advancement and business growth and infant mortality rates and birth outcomes. And racial equity best practices recognize that there's a relationship between disparities in those kinds of outcomes and disparities in community assets and conditions that contribute to those outcomes. And root cause analysis best practices recognize that inequities in outcomes, community conditions, and assets all flow from decisions and practices further upstream. The goal is not just to assess and address unhealthy systems, but also to identify and uplift and amplify those decisions and practices that lead to community assets that drive positive outcomes. And this work that I'm referring to, this model is heavily based on the work of King County in Washington and Race Forward. And in this model, outcomes are the indicators of how people fare. That's how individuals, families, and communities fare socially and economically. And outcomes include things like educational attainment and school attrition, prevalence and severity of chronic disease, recruiting efforts and hiring and promotion results, and many other social and economic results. And community assets and conditions are the circumstances surrounding individuals, families, and communities where they live, work, play, travel, worship, shop. And community conditions include circumstances like access to quality healthcare, to education, to parks and recreation, housing and environmental conditions, access to resources that advance professional and business opportunities, and many other conditions. And decisions and practices are the policies, programs, systems, budget decisions, and business processes that influence the circumstances surrounding individuals, families, and communities, impacting how they fare. And these include historic and contemporary practices and decisions by governments, businesses, and communities. And decisions and practices may create, sustain, or simply not do enough to address structural racism or other forms of discrimination, bias against or for people based on class, gender, or social groupings, inequitable distributions of resources or power, or intergenerational inequities, meaning any combination of the above impacting multiple generations of families or communities over time. And this model helps us to understand and to address root causes of social inequities, including racial injustice. So for instance, let's look at St. Louis, Missouri, where families and communities face a history of discrimination based on race, immigration status, and other identities due to policies like redlining, racial covenants, and racial discrimination in lending and hiring. And redlining and segregation has been linked to temperatures in neighborhoods. This map aligns an analysis of temperatures on a particular day in the summer of 2019 with HOLC grades from historic redlining policies. The bluer areas are cooler and the warmer areas are more red. Let's focus on this grade A area. Looking closely, we see that this area that was graded A or best was one of the coolest areas in St. Louis at the time. And if you know a bit about redlining, you know that grade A areas are the areas that were entirely white and affluent. The cooler temperatures, these cooler temperatures have been linked to high tree coverage and vegetation. Now, on the other hand, when we look at this grade D or hazardous area, it was one of the warmest areas at the time. And in terms of redlining, those areas that were grade D were literally the areas that had higher or had Black populations, that had immigrants. And these warmer temperatures in these areas have, of course, been linked to lower tree coverage and less vegetation, but also to high proportions of paved surfaces. This disparity in temperatures, while seemingly trivial, leads to higher energy bills, negative impacts on chronic health and conditions, higher preterm births. And according to the CDC, urban heat islands have a deadly impact on cities like St. Louis, Baltimore, Philadelphia, and more. And moreover, the number of heat wave days has been increasing in many cities across the country and is expected to continue to increase for decades to come. The CDC says that causes of death related to heat include heat stroke, respiratory disease, and more. And again, this model helps us to identify unhealthy systems, but also helps us to design healthy systems and implement more equitable practices, anti-racist practices. And over time, we've evolved our guidance to help organizations to essentially apply GIS as a framework for racial equity. And that begins with guidance for applying an intersectional racial equity lens. And as we know, race and place matters. And ESRI provides data and tools and guidance to help you to apply a racial equity lens to business practices and decisions that impact the community assets and conditions and outcomes that we're all concerned about. And organizations are trying to apply an intersectional racial equity lens to examine and address disparities that may result from their actions. So they're looking to apply a racial equity lens that has race, ethnicity, and caste, as well as religion, language, country of origin, nationality, and immigration status. Moreover, these factors intersect with other social characteristics, including gender, sexual orientation, age, and ability, and characteristics that speak to income like home ownership and more, all of which impact or is impacted by where people live, work, or play. And we provide resources and guidance to help folks apply an intersectional racial equity lens to assess overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination. In fact, ESRI provides access to lots of spatial data to help organizations to explore, understand, and confront these challenging issues. And ArcGIS provides a wide and growing array of techniques and tools for developers to help organizations understand and unravel interrelated concerns, address barriers to equality, and design a future where all communities are served more equitably. You can also integrate GIS with best practice workflows for advancing racial equity and social justice. And this racial equity workflow is a critical aspect of applying GIS as a framework for racial equity. The workflow is derived from emerging and best practices for advancing racial equity and social justice. We simply infuse these standard methods and best practices for GIS and location intelligence to help you to design and create solutions that will help operationalize racial justice into business workflows. So organizations working to advance racial equity are trying to proactively seek out racial inequities, identify business decisions and policies that increase equity and opportunity. They want to identify clear goals, objectives, and measurable outcomes, all while engaging the community in the process. So the first stage of the workflow is map and analyze equity, meaning applying an intersectional racial equity lens to reveal and understand inequities, to locate populations of concern, and to identify barriers to equality. So at this stage, you can use ESRI's Living Atlas of the World to find data resources to enrich the data within your applications. You can embed engaging maps into your solutions, and you can take advantage of ready-to-use maps and content. And you can host your data in the Arcgis platform. And so with an understanding of where inequities are impacting populations of concern, organizations then seek to infuse their efforts with racial equity and social justice best practices, meaning ensuring that their programs, services, and business processes are equitable, anti-racist, if you will. So the operationalized best practices stage is where organizations seek to design and plan equitable allocations of resources, increase equity-informed decisions, and alleviate burdens on communities of color. So we encourage developers to leverage the Arcgis platform to identify more equitable resource allocations, automate workflows, including the work of teams on the ground, inform decisions by embedding geospatial capabilities directly into your business solutions, and ultimately embed equity directly into the business decisions and workflows. And finally, organizations need to ensure that their efforts to increase equity are having the impact they seek. So in the managed performance stage, organizations use decision-making tools to visualize racial inequities at a glance to adapt their strategies and operations dynamically. So embed maps and dashboards to assess impact directly into your solutions and leverage dynamic and engaging visualizations to help your users identify opportunities to increase equity. And leveraging the expertise of ESRI that ESRI has gathered from working with organizations all over the globe, and the robust geospatial capabilities that you can develop, that can help you develop solutions that enhance, workflows by literally embedding racial equity and social justice best practices into the process. And as you can see, ESRI provides comprehensive GIS and location intelligence resources to support a broad range of racial equity and social justice initiatives. And all of this comes together and is made available to developers using the Arcgis platform. So I'll talk a bit more about that platform, which is our platform as a service product for developers. So developers like you realize the value that meaningful maps can bring to your solutions. We all want to use best-of-breed location services and capabilities and easily integrate them into our solutions. And using open source mapping libraries is important to all of us because they give us the flexibility and control that we need in the development process. And we also want a transparent and easy to understand business model that won't be a barrier to our work. But above all else, we strive to build engaging apps and solutions that inspire action. So I want to introduce you perhaps to the Arcgis platform. It's a location platform as a service, or PaaS, designed to bring powerful mapping and location capabilities into the global developer community. And Arcgis is made up of 3 high-level elements: an excellent developer experience to help you to be successful by giving you access to our APIs and the ability to use the mapping library of your choice. The centerpiece of the Arcgis platform is the comprehensive set of location services that deliver content and capabilities, and a simple, transparent, and easy to understand business model that is fully consumption-based, where you only pay for what you use. And all of these elements come together to provide an intuitive experience for assessing and using the Arcgis platform. So let's take a look at each element a little bit more. So the platform provides a premium developer experience where you can use your preferred mapping API. The platform comes with a robust JavaScript API for web development, a set of APIs for mobile and desktop development, and scripting APIs enabling you to automate your mapping and analytics. These APIs are full-featured and engineered to exploit the full capabilities of the Arcgis platform, leveraging the GPU and the device hardware for performant drawing and analytics, and a client-side geometry engine that includes SQL API for querying features in memory, both spatially and through attribute queries, minimizing trips back to the server. and so many other capabilities. And you can use your own API with the Arcgis platform, allowing you to leverage the investments you've already made in your work without having to migrate or re-engineer your solution to use a different mapping library. And we support popular open source libraries, including Leaflet, OpenLayers, and Mapbox GL.js. And with the work we've done to enhance the back end services, you'll be able to use these libraries and pivot to our location services with just a couple of lines of code. And the best part about it is that all of these libraries are fully supported. And that means that in addition to support from the developer community, you can also contact Esri directly and take advantage of our world-class team of developer support analysts. All services offered with the Arcgis platform require authentication, and we give you a variety of token-based authentication options to choose from. And the platform includes an authentication option for API keys, and these API keys are industry standard, and they're easy to implement and can be scoped to specific services. So for some of you, this might be a preferred option. Now, API keys may not be for everyone, so you can use OAuth application credentials, perhaps because you prefer the additional security that OAuth provides. So the Arcgis platform gives you the flexibility to make choices based on your needs, which could include the effort to implement, ease of use, and level of security. But regardless of which option you choose, we've got you covered when it comes to authentication. And when you visit the developer site, you'll find a library of resources and tools to help you to be successful. For example, we have a developer guide that is your authoritative source for working with services from the Arcgis platform. Additionally, the developer site has extensive SDK documentation that includes both conceptual and API reference for all of our mapping libraries and all of your mapping needs, as well as documentation on how to use our location services with third-party mapping libraries that we discussed earlier. And the site includes over 100 tutorials with a live sandbox that you can code against directly to see updates instantaneously. And finally, the developer experience includes a developer dashboard. And this dashboard is designed to accelerate your onboarding and give you a personalized experience where you can easily access only the resources that you're interested in. And you can tailor it to what you do with the tech that you use in your solutions, and that should provide you with additional controls and insight into your usage of the solution. You'll be able to get detailed information on a transaction level for all of the services that your solution is using, giving you full transparency into the health of your product. Now let's discuss the next element in the Arcgis platform, and that's the collection of location services. They're available on demand, allowing you to leverage extensive content and powerful capabilities in your solutions. This includes everything from base maps to data hosting and visualization, as well as commonly used capabilities like geocoding and routing. And you can go even further with additional content and spatial analytics. So let's spend just a few minutes looking at each of these services individually. So the first service is base maps. These are a set of ready-to-use authoritative maps that can be used in the API of your choice with just a couple of lines of code. This includes dozens of pre-styled base maps designed by our team of professional cartographers, from neutral background maps to rich foreground maps, to maps that emphasize what we call human geography or streets, or physical geography like typography. There are maps blended with elevation that give you additional dimensions of information. And if you want something completely different, you can use our style editor and design a custom style that best suits your needs. So today's Esri location services deliver billions of base map views around the world on a daily basis. But it's not just about our data. You can also host your own data in the Arcgis platform. Hosting your data is not like storing a flat file in the cloud. And yes, you can store your flat file in our infrastructure, but this is much more. You create a service based on your data so you can visualize, you can edit, and you can analyze your authoritative content. When you host your content like GeoJSON, spreadsheet, shape files, text files, and more, when you host that in the Arcgis platform, it's secure, scalable, performant, and it's supported seamlessly in the API of your choice. And you can use it to access your data as features, vector or image tiles, as well as GeoJSON. Also, your data remains your own. So we don't ask you to give up ownership, and we don't collect telemetry of, data about what your users are doing with your data. So once you're ready with your data, the next step is really to visualize, right? So being able to visualize your data in unique ways is one of the strengths of the Arcgis platform, and one of the unique ways that you can really start to bring racial equity into your the solutions that you're creating. We give you tools to make beautiful maps and discover new patterns and relationships, like patterns and relationships between outcomes, community assets, and decisions. With maps and location, you can visualize complicated problems like racial inequity and social injustice. You can see answers and then drive action. Developers have the capabilities and tools to take data and quickly render features with an endless list of options and visualizations. You can also visualize your data in 2D or 3D with 3D models of buildings, landscapes, cities, and even the entire globe. And through a technique called smart mapping, you can take the guesswork out of setting your map properties or automatically analyzing your data, and make data-driven styling suggestions and create intelligent maps. And this smart mapping capability applies to 2D and 3D in all but just a few lines of code. The ability to find addresses and points of interest, of course, is another common mapping-related scenario, and our geocoding service is powered by industry-leading reference data that comes from multiple authoritative sources, including commercial data, government agencies, and our network of providers around the world. So that ensures that you get the most accurate search results. And this service also supports local languages and address formats. The next location service is routing, which has the ability to perform routing and get turn-by-turn directions as you would expect, which ultimately increases overall efficiency of daily workflows. Now, in addition to point-to-point routing, you can also route multiple vehicles to multiple destinations. Like the geocoding service, the routing service has global coverage and localized directions. The routing solver also takes into consideration things like current traffic conditions and dozens of restriction types, including U-turns, barriers, time windows, travel modes, and other stops. You can also calculate drive time areas, also known as isochrones, find the closest facility, and generate origin destination matrices. And so you can use these capabilities to understand things like disparities in access to critical community resources. But the platform offers more. In addition to capabilities that I just now talked about, you have access to an extensive library of data that includes demographic and statistical data like income, spending, market segmentation, information by race, gender, age, and so on. You can use these data services directly into your apps to enrich your own data or join with your own data. The Arcgis platform has many real-time live feeds like traffic, current weather, and recent events like flooding, wildfires, and natural disasters. So you can begin to understand the impact of these kinds of issues on communities based on race, ethnicity, and more. You also have access to high resolution imagery from multiple commercial and community providers that gives you more than just a static picture. This includes access to a historical collection of imagery so you can see changes over time. And as a world leader in spatial technology, we also provide you with hundreds of spatial analytic tools and operators. And that helps you to create understanding in your data. From geometric processing to attribute and spatial queries, and supporting interactive analytical operations in 2D and 3D. Now you can use, spatial analytics in a couple of ways. You can use it on the client side by leveraging the power of device resources, so you can build highly interactive user experiences, and you can also use analytics on the server where the tools sit right next to your data. And if you need even more analytics, you can also work with the big data, real-time analytics, advanced spatial tools, machine learning, and deep learning capabilities provided within the ArcGIS system. So we've taken a tour through some powerful location services in the ArcGIS platform. We talked conceptually about how to use GIS as a framework for racial equity and social justice. All of these services can be used in many different deployment patterns, including the web, mobile devices, desktops, and even system-to-system integration. And the base maps, powerful data visualization, routing, geocoding, spatial analytics tools, all can be used offline or online, indoors or indoors. And the third element of the Arcgis platform is the business model, right? So getting access to the platform is as easy as signing up for a free account on the developer site. In addition to an excellent developer experience and an extensive set of location services, you'll receive a generous free tier to kickstart your development efforts. So that includes, but isn't limited to 2 million map tiles per month, thousands of service requests for searching, routing, and storage to host your own content. And you'll find our consumption-based model to be transparent and easy to use and understand, because you'll only pay for what you use. And there are just, here are some of the early adopters like SAP and Salesforce who've already begun to use the Arcgis platform. So I just want to thank everybody for the opportunity today to introduce you to the Arcgis platform and how you can leverage GIS as a framework for racial equity. Our platform as a service is designed for all developers, and our GIS platform is uniquely suited to help organizations address racial equity. I encourage all developers to combine the two and help users increase racial justice everywhere. I'm not sure if there's time for questions or how this works.
Hey, thank you, Clinton. Yeah, if anybody has any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. We are able to be live for another couple minutes before we move over to the next session at 1:30.
Thanks, Julie. Hopefully everybody's enjoying the conference so far. I've enjoyed it so far, and have enjoyed these events for many years, actually. What we call the Living Atlas of the World actually is a repository of information from many sources, including the American Community Surveys from the census. And there's also lots of other data sources from other organizations like the CDC and others. And it's also possible for you and your organizations that you support to add additional data into the mix there. So that's a yes, public data like census in particular, and private collections as well. I bumped into GIS while working at the streets department in Philadelphia and started to realize that there was a connection between things like redlining and the maps behind me in drawers, and that with GIS there was a possibility to do something different to help design better outcomes. So I just really shifted gears from development and engineering kinds of things all the way into GIS. That was in response to a question of how I got started in this work.
All right. Yeah, thank you again, Clinton. Thanks for answering my question. Really appreciate your time in this presentation. For everyone who's watching, we will be recording all of these, and we're publishing them as little like mini stories on Technically, so you can rewatch it at your leisure in the next week or so. So thank you again, Clinton. I will have, or now I invite all of you who are watching now to join us in the next session. Let's see, it takes a community to build a tech ecosystem that is led by Code Differently. So we'll see you over in the main stage, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the Developers Conference. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. See you there.